Hi folks, welcome. Now, just a few years ago, who would have imagined that India's #1 SUV maker is going to be Hyundai? The widest range of SUVs as well, and a huge bestseller like the Creta. If early numbers are anything to go by, well, the Alcazar is also probably going to be just the same. But don't forget, there's also an electric SUV in Hyundai's lineup with the Kona. Interesting times. Speaking of electric SUVs, there's a brand new flagship from Audi that's just driven into our market that has the same credentials, but of course at the very premium end of this space. The e-tron is very capable. It's also reasonably practical. That's what I found out when I got to drive the car. Here's the review.
The Audi e-tron is finally here, the first foray by the four-ringed Bavarian to the EV space. The e-tron uses the VW Group's MLB Evo platform. It's taken its time getting here, but it is at least driving in alongside its Sportback alter ego. At first glance, and indeed when I first saw the static e-tron last year, it screams conventional Audi. It very much looks like a new avatar of the Q7 or perhaps even the electrified version of a Q7. And yet the two cars are not very similar in size, attribute and engineering terms, of course. The e-tron looks like an Audi through and through. Yet, while it manages to endear itself to Audi fans and adopters due to its familiarity, it also manages to stay vastly distinct and different from the others, cars like the Jaguar I-Pace, Mercedes-Benz EQC and globally, the Tesla Model X. Yes, those cars are very different in shape and even size, but given the EV space is not yet crowded and certainly more so in India, that will have to do for the rival set. And let's not forget that Audi is playing it bold by simultaneously launching the e-tron and e-tron Sportback, the sleeker coupe avatar that is also now launching in India.
The green license plate. Only electric cars get it, you know that. But from Audi's point of view, there are other elements which make it specifically EV or e-tron. The single frame platinum grey grille with its vertical slats, that's reserved for the electrics. You've also got orange brake calipers, the little orange badging around e-tron logo here on both sides, by the way, because you've got these electrically retracting flaps that open up for the charging points also on both sides, as I said. One's AC and DC, the other one's not, but it's nice that it's on both sides. That's the obvious stuff, but you've also got something subtle, which is a nice little touch from the designers, I think. This black element that you see down here, you'd think it's just part of SUV styling, yes, but it's been put specifically where the car's battery pack is. So it's a way to sort of tell you or symbolize the car's battery pack that is at the heart of every EV. You've also got two bulges back here, kind of subtle and very typical of Audi because that tells you it's Quattro or all-wheel drive enabled. In this case, e-Quattro.
For India, the car gets 20-inch alloy wheels, the continuous LED strip taillights, a panoramic sunroof and digital matrix LED headlamps. Now they have lane light, predictive cornering and they also animate in different sequences. Also new is a digital light projection possible in 5 patterns that the cluster will project on a wall or surface ahead of the car. Some of these features are only on the top variant, of course. The car's boot space ranges from 660 to 1,725 liters of space if you fold down the rear seats. In the front, you also have a 60-liter storage compartment that can house the charging cables, etc. The The e-tron is being offered with two variants, the 50 and 55. Both get a two-motor setup, one at each axle, and the transmission is a single speed.
You'll probably get tired of us talking about the instant torque you get on electrics, but you know what? Every time you get into one, you can't help but get excited about that. Yes, it is great fun to push the pedal to the metal because the car just takes off. But having said that, what's nice in this car is that for a lot of people who are transitioning from an ICE car to this one, especially those who like the VW universe and Audis in particular, they'll find it very familiar, very easy to drive, and certainly not disconcerting or worrying or apprehensive in any way. The power delivery is really nice and smooth, and it's very easy to get used to. The regenerative capability is also, like many cars, in 3 degrees or 3 steps. So you can have the maximum amount of regenerative process, as well as trying to keep it on a nice coast mode where it's not sort of eating into or impeding your driving style in any way. And you can adjust that while you're driving, of course. That goes without saying.
The standard adaptive air suspension gives you great ride quality and a supple feel. This is where the e-tron scores, as it has a nice big car feel with the comfort and SUV presence balanced quite beautifully. You also get Audi's Drive Select that lets you toggle between the various drive modes, including an off-road mode where the air suspension rises by 35mm. The efficiency mode is not ideal if you want quick or furtive responses for very quick maneuvers in traffic or on the highway.
Now, across variants, you also get Audi's progressive steering, which is great to have because what it means is the car will give you the right kind of steering response as you need, and that's based on not just your own driving inputs, not just on the Quattro all-wheel drive system, but also on the kind of traction the wheels are getting, and of course the speed you're driving at.
The e-tron has 8 airbags, ISOFIX child seat mounts, and tire pressure monitoring. It also gets an acoustic sound system that uses external speakers so that the otherwise silent car can be detected by pedestrians. The e-tron comes with charging points on both sides of the car. It is an AC power inlet on the left and an AC and DC socket on the right. An 80% charge using a basic 11 kilowatt AC charger will take 8.5 hours. We expect prices to range between 1 crore and 10 lakh to 1 crore and 20 lakh rupees ex-showroom. I am glad to have spent a substantial amount of time with it today. Now, all I want to do next is to get behind the wheel of its slightly sexier twin, the e-tron Sportback.
So you know everything you need to know about the e-tron, but you know what? The car is loaded with so much tech that a deep dive just on tech is necessary. We'll do that after a short break.
These days, having an electric car in your portfolio is being seen as a must-have strategy at most global car maker headquarters. But unlike the past, now an EV must not only be an efficient battery-operated vehicle, but in fact it must reflect the brand's most advanced engineering and should stand for everything that is cutting-edge, technologically advanced and sexy from that brand. In the premium space, it was Audi that took the lead when it began showcasing its e-tron concept way back in 2015 at the Frankfurt Motor Show. After much testing of several prototypes and a lot of background work done on battery systems and management at the whole Volkswagen Group, today we see the e-tron and the e-tron Sportback leading the pack as Europe's most successful premium brand EVs. So naturally, they are loaded with tech And while a lot of that has to do with what's under the skin, let's first get to the stuff you care about more.
Now, being an e-tron and being one of the high-end, cutting-edge Audis today, you better believe it, it is loaded with tech. The good news is that the interface and all the operations of it, the functionality, is exactly like all other Audis, the high-end models. And so you get the 3-screen display, the virtual cluster, which is always very cool to have with its different views, and of course you can toggle between the different things that you want to be able to access while you're driving, from your music to your navigation, all of that. Now you're used to that part, so I won't go into it. You're kind of used to seeing this too from Audis now, the dual display here, which splits up functionality. It's nice. The screen quality is excellent, the resolution is great, and the haptic feedback works really well. The only thing you have to get used to though is that when you touch something, you have to actually press it. You don't just tap it as you would on other cars. You do get used to it, and you know what? It's better because this way you know for sure that you've been able to do it. It's safer when you're driving. All of this display is angled a little bit towards the driver, so that's nice. And you know what I really like is that it's very unobtrusive. It's very much like a regular Audi in that sense. You don't sort of have this in your face, oh, I'm electric, and it's weird and gimmicky and different. It's just like how you've seen on other cars from Audi, and so it's really easy to get used to, and it also doesn't sort of weird you out.
The e-tron spec that India is getting is pretty loaded with standard features, especially the higher 55 variant. So, along with excellent material quality, you also get many goodies on board. The MMI is now in its most intuitive avatar yet, making the system easy to use and its interface even more attractive. BMW's iDrive still corners this market though. The lack of a rotary controller also now means you have the wrist rest so that you can easily use the lower of the dual touch screens. And the slick gear shifter is also integrated into that. Nice design for sure.
Being such a high-end model, you get a B&O sound system, always nice to have. And the other good thing is that, you know, in the India spec, a lot of things are standard across both the variants, and even things like wireless phone charging, Audi Phone Box as they call it, has been offered standard. It's very nice and neat because not only does the phone not rattle around, but it also fits in vertically, which is nice because it saves a lot of space. So I like that, and the functionality is easy. I wish there was a wireless connection for the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto too. That would have been nice to have. It's a little bit of a missing thing for me, but otherwise of course you can connect your phone through Bluetooth, and for Apple CarPlay etc. you can use the USB connectivity. And when you're done and you're leaving,
your mobile phone is still in the vehicle.
It'll still do that.
But this is not a connected car in the pure sense. No inbuilt SIM on the e-tron. But it will come with the Audi Connect dongle that's available with all models, which will give you the same telematics capability. You also get head-up display, ambient and contour lighting, power adjustable front seats with 4-way lumbar support, the air quality package with fragrance, 4-zone climate control, and a comfort key with a gesture-based boot opening and closing feature. The doors also get the soft touch closing function. The e-tron has an acoustic sound system with external speakers that emits a sound to alert pedestrians and animals of the car's arrival. No engine noise, remember? Parking aid and exterior 360 cameras are also standard on the e-tron family and a big help. Charging points are available on both sides of the car. AC on the left and an AC and DC socket on the right. The panels to access these open up electrically, which is kind of cool. A slow 11 kilowatt home charger will juice the battery to an 80% capacity in 8.5 hours, while the 150 kilowatt DC fast charger will do it in under half an hour.
You can of course go into the car details once you go into the settings, and you can see remaining driving range. You have the range mode, which is nice. It's the eco mode, if you will. So the regular range right now I have about a little less than 70% of the battery left. 255 kilometers. I hit range mode, it recalibrates and goes up to 298 kilometers. Of course, that means all operations become more efficient. You can't access certain driving modes, and even the climate control system automatically switches to range mode, which means it will run efficiently to try and save power. That's a good thing, and it's a nice little function. The e-tron has regular exterior mirrors for India, but in some markets, Audi does offer cameras instead of mirrors that broadcast a live view to screens inside. The car has energy recuperation, which means that it converts kinetic energy to electrical current, which gets fed back to the battery. This is like most EVs on the market anyway, so you do get 3 levels of recuperation. The highest also means the most resistance when you take your foot off the accelerator, making single pedal driving possible. You can adjust the modes using the paddles behind the steering wheel. Now everything from the engine management control to, of course, even the battery management and the distribution of power, both from the battery to the motors, as well as the recapturing of power that happens the other way, everything is controlled by a microchip. It's all done really efficiently, and I think that's the real technology angle of this kind of a car, and certainly every electric car that comes from here on, from Audi and certainly many other high-end manufacturers. It's the sheer advantage that you have of a lot of engineering that goes into the software and the hardware to make sure what you get is a really easy to drive, comfortable and dynamic experience all rolled into one. Yes, the car is mighty intelligent. The same helps control the digital matrix LED lights in the top spec. They have excellent functionality. Everything from lane light and orientation light to predictive cornering beams. These lights are very functional and help enhance safety while driving in the dark. Like many Audis, the e-tron also gets signature animation sequences for the head and tail lights when they come on or go off. And it also gets a new feature, dynamic light pattern projections in 5 sequence choices that you can customize for when the car starts or is turned off, and they project either on a wall in front of the car or even on the road. The e-tron gets an adaptive air suspension, 8 airbags, a tire pressure monitoring system, and Audi's staples, both Drive Select and Quattro all-wheel drive. I gotta say, I really love the sound when you're accelerating or even decelerating for that matter. And while some of that has to do with the sheer hardware of everything, a lot also has to do, I think, with our sensibilities that we've got over the years from Hollywood. Yes, all the sci-fi movies, a lot of the futuristic vehicles used to sound like this. And guess what? We have them now. Yes, the e-tron can do a lot to impress you, like many of the electric cars available today. That it is quintessentially an Audi SUV first and an EV next is probably its biggest USP. Alright, so that's the Audi e-tron. Please react to it. You can reach me on Twitter at Sid Patankar. Now, these two cars, when you kind of looked at their pictures or saw our reviews, you probably thought they're really similar. Putting them next to each other, you can tell that they're not necessarily as similar as you might think. The Alki has got its own thing going on. Yes, I'm calling it the Alki. And you've got the Creta, which of course has been a favorite for some time. So how are they different really? We'll tell you on the show next week. Tune into that. In the meanwhile, please wear your masks, please wear your seatbelts. If you're on a bike, wear your helmets. Bye-bye.